Autism. I do not know enough about it. So I decided to catch up with my mate Orion Kelly. Now he is a YouTuber. He's also like me, but 8 years older. He's had a radio career, a television career, and now he runs a very successful YouTube channel. We connected and decided, hey, let's have a chat, because I'm always looking to expand my knowledge on neurodiverse conditions, and not being autistic myself, I felt like I couldn't really do any content on it on this channel. So I decided to catch up with him and ask him everything and really show all the cards and just say, hey, what is autism? Explain it to me. And this was a really safe space where I could ask the questions you're not really allowed to ask autistic people. It's a really great interview. I've just edited it. Have a watch. Orion Kelly, I am so glad to sit down and talk with you, because you and I have had a very similar career in different parts of the country and at different times, because I'm 32 and you're 40, and we're both neurodiverse. And I would love to sit down with you and chat all things autism, because having Tourette Syndrome myself and ADHD, it's like there's a giant pool of neurodiversity and we all sit in it, but I feel as though you and I are at the other ends of the pool. We're still in the pool, right? We're still in it, but I've never been over to your side. So I really want to take this opportunity to sit down with you on a casual basis to kind of, to be honest, ask you the questions that I'm a little bit afraid to ask, just to expand my knowledge, because I want to know everything. Because the amount of people in my community, in the Tourette Syndrome and ADHD community, I even struggle to word it. So is it my community has autism or my community is autistic? So what is the correct terminology I should be using?
Well, you've stepped on a landmine, Seamus. So, yeah, we're talking about identity first, and we're talking about there's a couple there. There's person first and identity first. Okay, so right, so person first is, Jim uses a wheelchair, right? Because you're not going to say Jim is a wheelchair. So every disability is different, right? You have to look at it. Every disability is different, and clearly you would say, because you're not Tourette's, you're not a Tourette syndrome person, right? You have Tourette's, right? So there's a divide, but I would say the preferred and modern approach by the community in general is to use identity first, which is I'm Orion and I'm autistic. So I'm part of the autistic community. So the autistic community rather than the autism community. Now, what's funny about this, and I think the thing about autism is it's kind of a life of its own. So now there is technically an autistic community made up of people who are autistic, and an autism community made up of people who have autistic people in their life. Now, what I find bizarre about that is, okay, so you're not autistic, but you know someone who's autistic. You're not in the autism community. You're in the community, right? Like, if I know someone whose skin color is a different color, it doesn't mean I'm in the different colored skin community, right? It's just because I know someone. I'm just in the community, and I happen to know someone who's different. That's the quickest and most basic way of explaining how we refer to our community, which would be more autistic people, autistic community.
So my cousin has autism. Should I be saying, this is my cousin, he has autism, or this is my cousin, he's autistic? Which is the correct one?
There's no correct and there's no incorrect, and the only person that can tell you the answer is your cousin. I can't speak for your cousin. You can't speak for your cousin. Some mum can't speak for your cousin. No one can speak for your cousin. No one is right. No one is wrong. If your cousin wants to say, I have autism, I'm not autistic, that's totally cool. If your cousin wants to use functioning labels, which the majority of the community completely disagree with and reject, and he wants to say, but don't worry, I'm high functioning to make a girl or someone like him more, good, go for it. Or she, either way, that's fine. This is the thing, right? It's ridiculous that we could be so different. Neurodivergent people, we're so different, yet somehow we have to have one set of rules for everyone. So we can say what would be the preferred approach or the current, mostly used approach. But once we start getting to the point of telling you the right or wrong answer, we've missed the point. So you need to talk to your cousin. I would never, ever, ever refer to diagnosis or identity on behalf of someone else unless you've specifically had that question with them. And by the way, this goes for parents of kids who have ADHD or Tourette's or who are autistic. You don't just go ahead and make decisions based on other people. And I know there's a certain age there, but you see what I'm saying? That can filter through to teenage years and young adult years, and it's like you don't even have your own identity. So that's where it gets really tricky. Best rule, ask the person.
I really like that answer. It's resonated with me so much because, and I say this in my keynote to a lot of people who are in the neurodiverse world, and specifically to parents, something my parents did really well is they never spoke for me. So they never said, hey, this is Seamus. By the way, he's got Tourette Syndrome. They would just say, this is Seamus. And if someone ever noticed, oh, why does he keep twitching? What's wrong with him? They would never say, oh, he's got Tourette's. They would always look at me and go, what would you like to say to that? And then that gave me the ownership. That gave me the sense of, this is mine. And if I wasn't up to it, I would lie. And I don't want to tell them, so I would just lie about it. Or I'd tell them the truth. Both answers gave me confidence because it was mine.
Yes.
I could do with it what I want. If I wanted to lie about it, I could lie. If I wanted to, and that gave me ownership. So that's really great to hear that it's more so there's no blanket rule. It's the specific individual and how they would like to be addressed with their neurodiverse condition. I love it. Now, I would love for you as well, in your best words, explain to me what autism actually is, because the best way I've heard it described, and I would love to hear your answer to this, is just imagine everybody's brain is an iPhone. People with autism, their brain is a Samsung. They are the same thing, they just work differently.
Okay. That's horrible. I hate that. There's a couple of reasons. The first reason is if we're going to talk about neurotypical people, so non-autistic people or people that aren't neurodivergent, they're the PC. Okay, like seriously, if we're calling neurotypical people the max, we've lost it. Okay, they're the PC. They're the square cookie cutter. Everyone's the same PC. Neurodivergent people, I'm the goddamn iPhone. Okay, we're the max. So, okay, yes, it works, but this is a better way of putting it. Autistic people just have a different operating system.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Like, because, our brain is our computer, yeah? Our computer of our body. So our brain is autistic. Okay, and I keep hitting my table and getting overexcited and making my screen flip, so I apologise to people, but they're used to it. But anyway, I guess the point I would say is, okay, what is autism? It's a neurodevelopmental disability. Some call it a condition, some call it a disorder. Now, the reason why I say all three is because I think it's important that everyone's preference is heard, and I can tell you the differences. So it's not, this is the thing, I say neuro and you think intellectual disability. I didn't say intellectual disability. It's not an intellectual disability. There's co-occurring conditions where someone can be born autistic and have an intellectual disability. That's co-occurring, right? That's like saying you've got ADHD and epilepsy, right? They're not the same. So autistic people, it's a developmental disability that can create challenges for social and communication, and also for repetitive and restrictive behaviours. And of course, there's a very big checklist and many things, and it's clearly at a level that would be profound for any standard neurotypical person. So it's a neurodevelopmental, therefore it's a different brain. Our brain is wired differently, different operating system, however you want to put it. So yeah, the phone thing works. I'm just being a stickler, but yeah, it works. And I think the only difference is, okay, so I say it's a neurodevelopmental disability, and you might think, well, there's three people here. Me going, it's a disability because, well, that's a fact. It is. I mean, I'm on the NDIS. It is, and I'm not trying to like mask it and say it's a superpower. I know there's something you refer to, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But this isn't a superpower for me. Like, you go ahead. If I could be Superman tomorrow, I would. I'll take it. This ain't no. You can take this superpower if you think it's superpower right now. Okay, like I'm basically just Batman. Okay, like I'm like Batman didn't have superpowers. He was just rich, right? That's me. So but except I'm not rich. So it's a disability, factually. Now the next person is parents. Don't you dare call my child disabled. They're not disabled. They can walk and they can live and think and talk, and it becomes complicated. And then there's condition, which is like, that's the fence sitter. Let's move on. Who cares about the fence sitter? And then there's disorder. It's like, well, hang on. What do you mean a disorder? Like, so you're saying your brain is ordered and my brain is disordered? It's like, well, there's a developmental challenge there, but no. So, and then you can also look at it like, but it's diagnosed using the DSM-5. And to be frank, that comes down to what people would class as mental health or mental illness, or different types of mental illnesses. But autism isn't a mental illness, so it's a very complicated thing. And the biggest issue is because not only you but myself, we live with something that is in a brain, and in 2022, science still knows nothing about the brain. I mean, we really don't know bugger all about the brain. So, yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand. It's a neurodevelopmental, neuro meaning it's our brain. That's the best way of looking at it. There's nothing about me that is autistic apart from my brain. Take my brain away and I'm dead, right? Without a brain, I'm dead. And that's where I find it's interesting when you hear arguments like, I don't want my child to be defined by their autism. Well, they're not going to be defined by their school uniform, but they're going to be defined by their autism because it's their brain. So, yeah, I think this is where the diagnosis or explaining it is really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up the disability, disorder, or condition, because I'd love to talk to you about that. I have had, I don't want to say arguments, but I've had people come up to me and say, hey, it's a disability. You should be using that word. I personally, this is my personal use for me. I don't like using any other word other than condition, because exactly that, as a fence sitter, I want to neutralize it. First of all, I don't like the word disorder because it's like, it seems negative. It's a
no one should like it. It means that only some people are, and it means only some people are good and others are broken or bad. Yeah.
And for me personally, I don't think, Tourette Syndrome doesn't always fall into the disability category. For me, it's not a disability, but for some people it is. So it depends on, I guess, how severe their Tourette's is. I know some people who can't work because it's so bad. I know some people who, they're in wheelchairs literally because of their Tourette's. So in that element, yes, it's a disability, but it's almost like I feel I don't deserve to use the word disability, and it would be, I don't want to say offensive, but wrong to the people who have Tourette's so severe that it is debilitating and they can't work for it. And so that's why I personally only ever call it a condition. Yes, not just to sit on the fence, but just to make it nothing.
I would say you're being more controversial than I am, and you don't even realise it. So you're not a fence sitter. The fact that you can say that, but then still freely and openly say syndrome, is astounding. Yeah, and I don't mean that in offensive. I don't mean that in an offensive way, but I mean like people hate using the phrase syndrome in the autistic community, right? They look at it as a negative word, as negative as disability.
Yeah.
So like Asperger's syndrome, for example, say, right? Asperger's syndrome. People might go, I used to, like I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, but now it's autism, right? And they might refer to, I don't like to say that word. It's yuck. I don't like syndrome and Asperger's. And then they get into the whole German Nazi stuff. But anyway, so what's interesting is there's so many things that are interesting now. And these things, by the way, they noise cancel, and I feel like I'm talking in a tunnel. I can't hear myself think, and it's just really starting to stress me out. But anyway, that's autism for you. So, okay, let's stop for a second. You're different. You have different experiences to me. I'm autistic. You're not. Okay. You look at me and you go, so your argument would say, and this is not what I'm saying, I'm just putting it there for the people watching because I want people to be interested in our chat. You're saying I'm a fraud. Now, you're not saying that, but your argument says, look at this guy. He's well-dressed. He's not as attractive as me, being you, but he's attractive enough. Not as funny as me, being you, but he's funny enough. He's kind of like the cheap Melbourne version of me. right? So, yeah, but he's not disabled. What about him is disabled, right? Why would he be on the NDIS? What's he on the NDIS for? And why is he taking our money? What do you mean? Like, and it's okay. So this is a YouTube chat. It's a bit hard, but I still don't know what shoe goes on what foot for my kids or me. I still get overwhelmed by parenting things and stressful things and need daily support. There are things I need daily support for. So the best way to put it is without having autism, right, or without being autistic or without having ADHD or Tourette syndrome. That's why I keep saying Tourette's, by the way. See, that's my own judgment, right? I keep saying that purposefully, but it's my own judgment. So I'm actually, in a way, I should apologize for not saying it correctly because that's my judgment on syndrome. So I apologize. But without that, would my day-to-day life be in any way disabled, or would it be better? I'd say it'd be much easier. I'd have friends for starters. Don't have any friends. I'd have probably, successful career. Don't. Or respect from anyone. Don't. Would your life, but for Tourette syndrome, would your life be disabled, or would it enable your life? Does Tourette syndrome disable you from experiencing life the same way someone without it does? Now, I get the idea that you're able to harness your energy and use it for good, and that's amazing. That's what I do too. But I disagree with you if you want to tell me that you genuinely think that having Tourette's or not having Tourette syndrome is the same degree of disabling or enabling your life. And that's where I see it as a disability. And I think the conversation here is we have to stop looking at severity. We do that with autism. We say, oh, you've just got light autism or, severe autism. Now, I think, and this is very theoretical, I think there could be a case for a new diagnosable condition called severe autism as opposed to autism. And I think that's valid, and I think it should be looked into. But there's no such thing as light Tourette's or severe Tourette's. You either have Tourette's or you don't, and everyone experiences it differently. And someone who you think has severe Tourette's may have it lighter on some days than you. And that's why it's fluid. That's why it's a spectrum. A spectrum isn't linear. It's a color wheel, like when your computer's about to crash. So that's how I kind of see those things differently. And I agree, you do amazing work and you use your differences for good, but to say that they, in a way, don't impair your experience of life or your quality of life to the way that someone that didn't have them does. I think that's where we miss the point that you are actually worthy of being able to acknowledge that your life is disabled because of a brain being different. I don't mean for you, I mean for others. Orion, you're so annoying. Seamus, you're freaking me out. Go away. Push away. You can't work here. You can't be like that. You can't do this. I don't want to date you anymore. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to be I'm not going to hire him. Who would want to give him a job? So that's not a similar experience. As an autistic person, I rant. I apologize. I get passionate and rant. Did that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that last sentence there has whatever it is that your brain has it disabled your life in any way? I think that really summed up and put it into perspective for me. Absolutely. And it's interesting because what you were saying there about on the different scale of things. And so when I first became a keynote speaker and first became an ambassador for Tourette Syndrome Association Australia, I experienced imposter syndrome in this new career because I went to a Tourette Syndrome camp and I saw students or teenagers who had coprolalia. And I remember comparing myself and going, oh, my Tourette's isn't as full on as that kid's. Then I don't deserve to be able to get up there and talk about it because mine isn't as bad, if you will. And that I'm just saying how my brain was thinking, right?
Everyone should think that. Yeah. Everyone should think that. But who's going to speak for them, Seamus?
Well,
who's going to advocate for them?
Great you said that. Well, what I came to this realization, and it was after a few months and a few serious chats with my psychologist about it. I heard someone say, I was doing a school talk, and before I got introduced, he said, we were talking about adversity, and everyone faced challenges, some are bigger than others. And it hit me, and I went, how dare you say that some are bigger than others? Because to that individual, doesn't matter how small you think it is, that's the biggest thing in their life. And I remember having to think that, going, hey, I can't compare my Tourette's to their Tourette's. They're going through their situation, and they can't take away the things that I went through. And I remember feeling that's when that sense of ownership came back and going, you know what? Even though my Tourette's is different to theirs, I still went through shit, man. I still went through horrible times, emotionally, mentally, socially, because of my Tourette's. Just because theirs is different to mine, how dare I let them take it away from me? So, yeah, that was a really eye-opening moment of owning it again, going through that acceptance journey and owning what it is that I've got and not looking at anyone else, but looking inward, and this is mine, this is what I've got. And yeah, you're right. If I don't speak up, then who will?
Absolutely. And that's why I embrace the idea that, I embrace the premise that it's a disability, because it does, to one degree or another, it disables my life. And as part of the diagnostic criteria, I mean, I need daily support. And that doesn't mean that my support needs or my care needs are the same as everyone else. Just like you said, doesn't mean that your experience is the same as everyone else. So I think that's where it's more sophisticated. We can be more sophisticated and say, you know what, absolutely there are people that experience it to a greater degree than me, but not every day, and me sometimes. And that's the whole point, that because there isn't one size fits all for anything, right? Like, it's like, you can have people in wheelchairs that might be able to move more parts of their body than other people in wheelchairs, right? Doesn't mean they're not still in a wheelchair. So it doesn't stop. I still think it's funny that, I hear some people refer to people that aren't disabled as able-bodied. So hang on. What about the people that have a neurological disability? We're able-bodied. We're still behind the eight ball a lot of times. And these are we're talking like a strain of the year advocates that refer to people that aren't disabled as able-bodied people.
Yeah.
It's very strange, so anyway.
Yeah. A question I'd like to ask you that I get all the time. It's almost a statement. So when I share my story about, yes, I had to overcome the challenges with Tourette's, like I had to learn how to manage my tics so I could be on TV. And they say, wow, Seamus, that's so impressive. And I just think, well, is it? I don't know. It's just something I had to do. And then they ask me, what's life like with Tourette's? And I think, I don't know, because this is all I've ever known. I don't know any different. So I kind of want to get your response on that of what is it like living with autism? Or do you not know any different? That's just who you are. That's your brain.
Yeah. So, it's if I had a car crash in my 20s and that put me in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, then yeah, you can say I'm living in spite of these injuries. I'm living in spite of a bad decision to get behind the wheel, right? But I'm not living in spite of being autistic, because I was born autistic. I was born autistic. I die autistic. It's not a disease to be cured. It's a difference. And as a result, I get what you're saying. People probably do ask that question of you more than me, because of, being known for Tourette's is probably a bit different in that, your physical manifestations are easier to spot, but then when you're not having those physical manifestations, it's almost like, you're normal again, right? When you're not, where, an autistic person, it affects everything. How could I have had a career like you in radio and TV if I am socially challenged, communication challenged, I'm awkward, and how is that possible? I mean, well, how is that possible? And I think that's the just the bizarre paradox of being autistic, and the experience of what people think. So I don't like that kind of. It's almost like infantilizing or patronizing, and it's that they call it inspiration porn, I believe. So
yeah.
things like love on the spectrum, I'd class that as inspiration porn because what I often do is, and I've done reviews on my channel, and it's not pretty. Like I had to have phone meetings with the boss of ABC and all the pictures, and it's like, that was fun. But anyway, the bottom line is I go, look, have you watched Love on the Spectrum? Yeah, of course I watched it. Okay. What was like, would you say your reaction was like a cuteness, like, oh, I feel so good, like, oh, isn't that sweet? Aren't they cute? And a lot of them go, yeah, that's exactly the reaction. Like, isn't that everyone's reaction? I'm like, well, okay, cool. So you've just discriminated against an entire class of people. You've made adult autistic individuals into puppies, right?
Yeah.
But you've used them to make you feel better in the dating world, and under the guise of it's cute. It shouldn't be cute. It's a documentary, by the way. It should be a real insight. Yeah. So this is where it becomes hard to break between the idea that people go, you have a disability and you've achieved something, and use that as like inspiration. No, I'm not inspiration because I've achieved things. I've achieved things because I've failed, I've tried, I've set my mind to it, and I've achieved things just like everyone else. It's no different. Imagine if we did that to the reverse. Like if a neurotypical worker finished an everyday task, we gather around them and clapped them. Like, how would they feel? That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And something I want to ask you, because so my understanding is you were diagnosed with autism quite late in life, like only a few years ago, right?
Or in my 30s, because of my son. Yep. So when my son was young, very young, he was born different. There's no question about that. But yeah, so basically, but for my son, I may have never received a diagnosis. And there's a couple of reasons. One, it's because, well, the diagnosis process was like when you fill out the forms, my wife and I are like, oh, this is me, this is me as well. But in addition to that, one of the main things about autism for adult assessments is when your capacities can no longer reach your demands and stresses. So I got through life because my demands and stresses had never gone past my capacity to meet them. But then when you get married and have kids, it's a very different life. It's very hard. And for someone who has clear challenges, I mean, it's just factual. So that is really the main reasons. Number one, having someone who was like me. Number two, the idea of having kids, and us realizing this is where the daily support needs come into play, because you can see my capacities were drowned. So yeah, later in life, diagnosis.
And what went through your head, and what was the emotion like hearing that you are autistic after all these years, not knowing, and then hearing it, getting the diagnosis? I want to get an understanding of your emotional journey with that. Was there a sense of no wonder, or was it like, oh no, like what was it that you went through? So,
I mean, the diagnosis story is I'm not going to go through it in this one because I'll just get to the point because it's documented and I don't want to bore people. But basically, the first psychiatrist I saw wasn't a specialist. I didn't know. The GP sent me there, and they said, "Oh, because you can look them in the eye from time to time and went to uni, you're not autistic." Because they're just kind of like 10 minutes in. It's unfortunately there are really bad professionals out there with no education. So I finally saw a psychiatrist who's like a professor in the field and was diagnosed after 3 or 4 sessions. But I'd say, look, but for my diagnosis, I'd be dead. Simple. I'd be dead by my own hand. Really? But for my diagnosis, the only thing I thought after 20, 30 years on the earth was, I'm a bad person. Nobody likes me. I don't fit in. I'm not meant to be here. I'm here to suffer. And that's enough. I'm tired. I didn't even think I was suicidal. I was just tired. Who wouldn't be tired if their only thought is that I just don't fit in and no one wants me, no one likes me, so I must just be a bad person, like a person who shouldn't be here? How do I get through to the keeper? Do you know what I mean? But for my diagnosis, I'd be dead because it gave me an insight that actually you're not broken. You're not a bad person. You will still suffer because people do. life is suffering, but the point is, you now know why you're different, why you don't fit in. Because, you know, you've worked in radio, I've worked in commercial radio, we've worked with the same network in different stations. And, you know, there's a lot of pressure two ways, and it's contradictory. And that's what I never understand about radio. Number one, your show has to be successful. And number two, you have to tick all the HR boxes. Now you can't, that's not possible. It doesn't make any sense. Like for me, I was kind of like, you know, the boss of the whole network at the time, you know, kind of called me the Australian Howard Stern because there were no rules for me. But then of course, and I was the only show on the whole station that ever rated #1 in a metropolitan city. But I was the first to get warned or, you know, pushed away whenever I was like crossed the HR line, which was never inappropriate. I mean, people didn't like how I talked to them, or I reacted wrongly to things, or because I was autistic, I was undiagnosed autistic. That you know, if you're great at something and you love something and you pretty much feel like you're being blacklisted because people just don't think you're a nice person, you know, what do you think it would do to you mentally? So to get a diagnosis, to then understand, okay, so I can see now. I can see these were issues, and now it wasn't up to the employers to fix these because they had no insight. I couldn't tell them. If I did now, it would be I'm autistic. I need some assistance and inclusions, and that would have worked. But in saying that, you know, major radio networks, major employers, I ask them all the time, "Can I have a look at your autism HR policy?" And they laugh at me. Well, there's no such thing. Well, that doesn't make any sense because isn't HR about basically the handling of people, and therefore people are controlled by their minds, and I've got an actual different mind. You're going to say you're punishing me if I can't make my autistic mind flick a switch and act neurotypical. No, that's actually impossible. So I can't be punished for not being neurotypical when I'm autistic. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that doesn't exist. So it's basically it's a never-ending battle. So for me, you know, it was a turning point in understanding, and then as it progressed, it started to become a realization that I've spent a lifetime being someone I don't know who I was, and then who am I? Who's the real me? You know, where will I find that person? And then also too, you got to keep in mind, I'm married and I have kids. This is before diagnosis. I have friends and family. They're the last people that accept it. Strangers will accept it quicker. Yeah, like if you try to tell friends or family, not my wife, she was extremely supportive. I'm saying, you know, extended family, yeah, whatever, man. Like, you know, like if I told a boss from radio back in those days, like, yeah, whatever, dude, you're just a dick, right? You know, like, and it doesn't help, and it's not an excuse. It's actually just a reality. So I think it actually gets harder for an adult. Because you reach that point later on. I think for most adults, it should be 100% relief. 100% relief, a validation, a justification. And I often say it like this. If you're diagnosed with a neurodivergent condition later in life, don't say you were diagnosed. Say you were recognized. I was recognized as an autistic person in my 30s because I was born autistic. Like, you can't get it later. So if you're born autistic, you weren't diagnosed for a long time, and then finally someone recognized you. And I say that because it helps people understand you weren't diagnosed with autism the day you were told you're autistic. You were born autistic. Just someone finally recognized that in you at that point. Does that make sense?
Yes. A question that I want to ask you that kind of I get asked all the time is, what kind of advice you'd give to someone living with Tourette's? I always say, hey, the most important thing is you've just got to accept it because it's up to you and your own personal journey, right? But with autism, is there a specific management that, or something to do with to keep mentally healthy, or is there something you need to do to keep on top of? Because I cannot relate to autism. Is there something you kind of have to do at an early age to live well with autism? Yeah,
it's interesting you say that, because I would say 50 to 70 to 80% of the things you say you experience, autistic people experience. So believe me, it's way closer than you think it is, your experience. I would say when we talk about advice for people who are autistic, right? I live with my wife. I don't live with autism. Like, doesn't lay next to me in my bed. It's in my brain. So living as an autistic person, I think the first thing is that you have to take control of your own identity. Don't let your family, whether it's your parents or your partner or your friends, dictate who you are and how you should be viewed and try and tell you this and that. Just understand yourself and your own identity. And I think the big thing is, as an autistic person, okay, so it's a neurodevelopmental disability. So it's a brain thing. Our brain experiences the world differently to others. So, which means sensory wise, we can be overloaded or overstimulated by sensory input. But we can also be understimulated, which can make us bloody agitated. I know it sounds strange, but overstimulated and understimulated are both can be very dangerous. They, in addition to masking, suppressing our true autistic selves, they combined can lead to meltdowns and shutdowns, which aren't tantrums. They aren't controllable. Like your tics, I can't control a meltdown or a shutdown. It's where the brain disconnects. It reboots. So it's an uncontrollable reaction by the brain, not something I can just jump in and flick a switch. And in addition to that, if you cause that enough, you're going to burn out. And an autistic burnout is different. It's it's an absolutely profound experience of not only exhaustion, but physical and mental and everything. You really can't talk, can't work, doesn't matter what you want to do. So what I say is, okay, so we know the things that help. And the things that help are regular alone time. Whether you're a parent or a partner of an autistic person, I don't care if they're 10 or 60, they need regular alone time. And you might go, everyone does, right? No, I agree. Everyone needs alone time. You're not getting the point. The difference is autistic people rely on it regularly, as in every day, maybe a couple of times a day, not like just the me time you might want to have. There's a difference. And it's not because they're selfish, it's because it's a regulation thing. Our brain's different. If you experience the world at a hyper level to everyone else, don't you think you're going to need more breaks? And that's as factual. And in addition to alone time, I always say, whether you're parents or partners, kids or adults, you must continue to feed your special interest. In the autistic community, there's a thing we like to call a special interest, but what I basically say is it's like a passion, or another way of putting it is an intense interest. So mine would be content creation. You need to let the child or the parent or the adult in your life who's autistic to have alone time, but it's secondary to that and differently to that, to spend time on their special interest, right? So my wife sometimes will say, look, you're getting a bit agitated or a bit wound up. Maybe you should go up to the study and edit a video or have a break or work on something. And in doing that, in spending that time on your special interest, on your passion on a daily basis, which could just be researching animals in a zoo, you are regulating and recuperating and bringing yourself back to a sense where you can go back into a world where everything is at a hypersensitive level and continue to live. It's not even about thriving. It's just about improving quality of life. So please don't discount, regardless of age, the importance of daily alone time and daily time, protected time to focus on special interests. And it doesn't matter what it is. Don't judge it. Just allow it, because when you're experiencing life at a hypersensitive level, one way or another, these are the kind of things that can keep us in the zone of having a quality of life that is acceptable. And also, I always say, trust me, this is a win-win. If you do this, it improves your quality of life, as in the people that have an autistic person in their life. So it's a win-win for everyone. But it's a judgment, right? Like, oh, you're a grown man and you need alone time every day, or you need to go up and do your special interest. There's a judgment to that. But it's like, okay, you can put a judgment on it, but I've got a different brain, and the world is like, if you could experience how the world is for me, even for a minute, you'd sleep for a week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really put it in perspective. And you know what? I've come into this thinking I can't relate to autism, or I can't relate to autistic people. But what I'm getting is that we both experience the similar backlash, for want of a better term, from society. We both experience, the frustrating comments, the judgments, the people double taking, people thinking we're weird, we're different, we're annoying. We both get that. And that has really helped me understand, you and what you're going through and being autistic so much more. So I've really, really enjoyed having this conversation because I really try to expand my knowledge so I can understand autistic people so much better, because I feel as though I can't really talk about it and I can't do any content on it because I am not autistic. So I have really, really appreciated this chat. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. And I think shared experiences make us feel, closer and better. So it's healing for everyone. But no, thanks so much for being on my channel, and it's been great to be on your channel. And hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely, you're awesome. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thanks, mate.
Huge thanks, Orion. Mate, that was absolutely awesome. If you want to check out his YouTube channel, I have put all the details in the description of this video. If there are any questions you think I missed or any questions you think I should ask next time, I would love to hear from you in the comment section. And if you're autistic, I would love to know what you thought of that interview. Do you think we accurately summed up autism, asked the right questions, the wrong questions, or how do you like to be addressed? Is it with autism or you are autistic? I'd love to know. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.